Welcome to the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum's Zoom series, Trolleyology. My name is Kristen Fredrickson. I'm the manager of public programs and outreach here at the museum. And thank you again to everybody for joining us today. And welcome back to many of you who I have seen before here on Trolleyology and in person. This virtual series features programs on Pennsylvania transit history topics, stories about the trolley era or our collection that you can experience from home, usually on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And occasionally, as you see, we branch out to other subjects as well. So if you have a presentation that you're interested in sharing, specifically one that kind of fits our museum mission, anything about Pennsylvania, the trolley era, cities where our streetcars come from, please reach out. So you have my email address in the confirmation email that you got today. And you can see a list of upcoming programs on our website. I actually need to update that with some recently announced presentations, which we'll talk about at the end of the show. But I will share our website in the chat box in just a minute here. And I want to extend a very special thank you to those of you who donated when registering for tonight's program. We really appreciate your support of the museum, particularly our virtual programs. We're grateful that you help us keep this going. So let's see. I think pretty much everyone here is familiar with the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum, but just in case you're not, we were established in 1954 as the Arden Electric Railway by a group of trolley enthusiasts called the Pittsburgh Electric Railway Club. And we opened to visitors a few years later in 1963. And we are located along the former interurban line between Pittsburgh and Washington, PA. We've got over 50 trolleys here and electric railway cars, about 20 of them operate. And now we're well over 30,000 visitors per year who come out and visit us and take the 4-mile scenic ride here at the museum. Let's see. Today, this is late breaking news. We had a very special day at the museum. We had a rollout ceremony for PCC 1138. So it's not quite in service just yet, but it's out on the line. And chances are you'll see it if you visit the museum because everybody's learning how to operate it right now. And you can get some really nice pictures of it too. So special thank you to everybody who worked on the car over the past decades, really. Specifically the team that helped us over the finish line there at the very end. Okay, and we are open now for our summer hours, which are Tuesday through Sunday. So we're only closed on Mondays. You have no excuse not to visit us. So 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. with the last full experience starting around 3 o'clock. So you can ride both trolleys that are running. And then lastly, starting Friday, this is my last plug for the West Penn Trolley Meet. It's going to be a lot of fun. All these pictures that you see like kind of here along the top are outdated because we are now based at our new Welcome and Education Center. And you can see that kind of in some of the bottom pictures here. And we have, let's see, 48 vendor tables sold. We'll have a giant used book sale. We have lots of 7 or 8 visiting model railroads, and it coincides with our Anything on Wheels event on Saturday and Sunday, June 8th and 9th. So there's classic cars, antique automobiles, hot rods, and then there's fun stuff like school buses and transit buses and an RV and all sorts of fun things. So I hope you can come out and see us, if not this weekend, sometime this year. Okay, without further ado, I would like to introduce today's presenter, Hans Altena. He spent most of his career as an information technology professional, but he's been fascinated by trains since a young age. And he started volunteering with the Stibans Foundation in 1981, which is an organization dedicated to the preservation of major types of historically significant Dutch railroad rolling stock. And Hans has led many important initiatives for the foundation over the years, including a major milestone in 2009, when Stibans had their entire collection accessioned into the collection of the Spoorweg Museum, or the Dutch National Railway Museum, with the only exception being War Department Locomotive 33, because at the time, discussion and interpretation of wartime history was a sensitive topic for the museum. So as a result, the Stichting 162 Society was created, and the restoration of this Liberation locomotive, War Department 33, was started, and it was finished in 2012, and more US Army rolling stock followed that. So Hans started as the project manager for the Nederlands Transport Museum, the Dutch Transportation Museum, in 2021 as a paid employee, allowing him to move on from his IT career when his avocation became his vocation. So in April, Hans began working for the Stichting 2454 crew, which restores rolling stock, and he's the corporate secretary. Let's see. The 2454 crew charters and leases historic Dutch railroad rolling stock for all kinds of functions. So let's see, in sum here, Hans has always been fascinated by history, so he dove deeper into the stories behind the liberation trains of the Stichting 162, and for the last 15 years, he's scoured the world for sources that better explain the story of the military railway services. And this presentation, Rails to Victory, is the result. So at the end of this presentation, we will have a question and answer session with Hans, but the chat box will be open. So feel free to enter questions and comments during the show, and we can read through those at the end. And just to note, this program is being recorded and will be shared on our YouTube. And just to note, everyone's microphones are muted until then, and we're going to go ahead and turn off our videos as well, just so we can minimize distractions. Don't be offended if I come along and turn your video off. I'll invite you to turn those back on at the end. Okay, Hans, if you are ready, take it away.
I am, Kristen. Thank you so much for introducing me. I share my screen with the presentation. Here we go. Rails to Victory. Thank you. Hello to everyone. And thank you as well, Paul, for inviting me having this presentation in the US. It's quite a great honor to me, being a Dutchman, to tell something about an almost forgotten chapter of World War II, the military railway services, a part of the US Army Transportation Corps. So let's start the presentation, actually, Rails to Victory. As you may know, Germany started building their Third Reich, as they would call it, in 1939 by entering Poland. And at that time, England and France declared war on Germany because they didn't agree, of course, by what the Germans did. But after a year, the Germans were even trying to enter England. And this is a picture from London in August 1940, as the first bombs arrived at London City. And public transport, vanished actually in the bomb shelters, as you can see. It's terrifying, of course. Next picture is even more terrifying. You will all know this picture, a dreadful sight, of course. The American fleet at Pearl Harbor at the 7th of December 41, torpedoed by the Japanese fighters. It's dreadful, of course. And at that moment, as you all know, the United States declared war to Japan and Germany at the same time. And so the US got involved in World War II. Almost immediately, so at the start of 42, the government declared or asked all the factories in the US, and in the end it were about 185,000 factories participating in war production. As you may know, big companies like Westinghouse or General Motors built aeroplanes, tanks, whatsoever was needed for the warfare. And there were, of course, all kind of statements being like, we can do it. It's typical American, I think, always just to make such a big statement. And a photographer was at Westinghouse factory and did find Geraldine Doyle behind the lead. as you can see on the picture below. And he thought she was such a typical worker that Howard Miller, in the end, made this poster of her stating, "We can do it." Like I said, all kind of factories were into war production, like General Motors, as you can see, and see the general or the popular GMC army trucks. And on in California, Kaiser Wharf extended with 4 extra wharfs actually at Richmond to build the Liberty ships. Liberty ships were designed actually to take all the war production to Europe or later on even to Asia. And here we see such a wharf actually in action. And as the note stated, the ships were built actually within 3 weeks each, and about 2,500 were produced at a time. And as I know, I read about the first 2 ships actually sank as they were released from the from the wharf because it was done too quickly. Afterwards, it went well, of course, but still. All this production has to be paid for, of course, by the government, and the money wasn't available. So what, as some of the older people may know, war bonds were issued actually just to help the war production going on and going. And these are some of these posters being published at that time, in which you're encouraged to buy war bonds. And even if you went by public transport, like this interurban car, I think maybe Paul can assist me in which city this picture was taken, but still, you will see these advertisements on the tram car itself, back the attack with war bonds and Save to Save America, of course. And when you went by train, like these pictures on the left from the big hall from Union Station, Chicago, it's rather not in color. That's a pity. But even then, you can see the big banner on the upper left side, which states, "For us the bonds." And on the other wall, when you turn around 180 degrees, for them the bombs. It's obvious for who the bombs were, of course. And when you did look up to the sky, you will see the ceiling filled with aeroplanes. That was where your war bonds were up to make this happen, this production of warplanes, actually. So every day when you went out in the streets into big public halls whatsoever, you will see you were asked actually to participate in this war effort. President Roosevelt declared, "We will win this war at both ends, so eastern as western part of the world, and we will prove that. We will prove that by documents. We will prove that by film, by photographs. We will take them from all those actions and all the things which the Germans and the Japanese cause, actually." So the Signal Corps get the instructions to do so, actually. A small fact that's quite extraordinary is that the lenses used by most of the Signal Corps photographers were actually German lenses, because Zeiss Econ, a German company, made the best lenses in the world. And that's a little bit strange, but still, that's how war is. The railways, or actually the commanders, the US Army commanders, stated that the railways will form the backbone in the great or the operations in Europe and later on in Asia as well. And So they made plans to make new locos and whatsoever. And even the war production has to be transported within the US, of course, from all of these factories all over the country to the coastal parts, actually, at the west and in the east. And Union Pacific was one of the 52, I think, or 54 companies. Each state had its own railway company, of course, to pull these heavy loads. And Union Pacific had challengers at first, but they were not strong enough. And so Union Pacific ordered at Alcos 25 really, and you know them all, of course. This is an iconic picture of the first big boy actually rolling out of the factory. And it wasn't even, they weren't at first called big boys. They would have got the name Wasatch because of the Wasatch Mountains around the Elko factory. But one of the employees saw this really big engine, and he took a piece of chalk and said, well, this is a big boy, and I write it on the machine. And he wrote that on the smoke box. And as you know, nowadays, 4014, the one and only big boy running around at Union Pacific, still wears its wartime name, Big Boy, with chalk on the smoke box. That's really neat, of course. The Army part, the Transportation Corps, responsible for the logistics and transporting all kind of goods and war aspects, was established actually in July 42, and especially this part was established for Europe in three parts, divided: the first, second, and third MRS, military railway services. As you can see in the picture, is the parts where they were operating in North Africa, southern France, Europe in general for the second, and Middle East for the third MRS. They were all grand divisions, so about up to 50,000 soldiers each, and they were divided into smaller operating battalions, railway operating battalions, and shop battalions, 1 at 10. So 10 operating battalions as one shop battalion to just repair the machines and carriages the operating battalions use. And each battalion had an own designed insignia. As you can see on the right, there are about 150 battalions, so 150 different battalions. And these were collected. This picture is a print from the website of Nancy Cunningham in the States. She collects all kinds of railroad facts from World War II. And I'm really thrilled to have found this website of her with all these items on it. It's really special. And at those days, if you would read your magazine, your daily or your weekly or monthly magazine, you will find these advertisements from big railway companies, like Pennsylvania Railroad in the middle, which states what it takes to move a whole division, 75 trains to move all their equipment whatsoever. But even when you would have look at the shops, actually the toy shops, and like I said in these magazines, Lionel Trains on the left produced an army train actually just to have the kids as well into the role of doing so, and yeah, that's to keep them up with what's going on, actually, I think. And of course, on the right, the Union Pacific, throw their hat in the ring for victory, and we'll keep them rolling. Of course, they had to. Like I said, well, the commanders of the U.S. Army stated that the backbone would be the Allied railways actually, and they needed all kind of equipment because they expected none of the equipment of the European equipment available at the time they would arrive there. And they were right, actually. And they encountered or calculated, actually, that about 100,000 pieces of railway equipment were needed to move forward all those ammunition and food and whatever the front troops are needed. So they took say gave some orders to big companies like Alco to build locomotives, or Davenport, and they took some old blueprints and converted them into war machines, like the shunting type in top, the S100. Normally it took about 1 year to design a locomotive to make it production wise. And at that time, in the start of 1942, it took them only a week to have this design ready for production, and that's quite a challenge. It's amazing. It thrills me actually to have that ready within a week. It took some longer to make the designs on the S160, but still, yeah, they did it actually, and that's quite an achievement, I think. There were about 400 or 500 S100s produced, and another 2,100 of the bigger S160 good train steam locos. Quite new were the developments on diesel-electric aspects and effects, actually, diesel-electric locomotives. But still, the US Army dared to order 350 diesel-electric locos by Whitcomb in Rochelle, Illinois. And they did a really good job, as you can see in the middle. A paper press announcement was about the Whitcomb company doing really an excellent job, because they received the Army and Navy Award, the Excellence Award, and only 4,000 factories during the wartime received this award for producing a really quality product, and at time which functioned perfectly and whatsoever. So a really good job. The only aspect I wonder about, I haven't found yet anything on that on the internet or the archives I've been searching for, is what did it mean for those factories after the war? Could they make any progress by getting more orders, or maybe I hope for one of the listeners can tell me about what the benefits were actually after the war, having this Excellence Award. Actually, we go on and go to Pullman factory. They got the order from the US Army to produce a lightweight, small boxcar, and even next to this, more cars, flat car, tank car, whatsoever, by a standard of 7 meters in European measurements, 2 axles with typical European couplers and buffers on it, lightweight, so by not cardboard, but we call it multiplex. Paul, you can help me? What's it in English?
Sure, plywood. It's called
plywood. Sorry, yeah, of course, sure. Excuse me. But these were built with standards. A plywood plate of 4 by 8 foot was just a new standard. And this boxcar contains 20 of these plates, actually. And when you see the door in the middle, it seems to be, oh, it doesn't fit. No, it does fit. You take 3 of these plates, one at the upper part, one you divide in half, and the one half at the lower part of the door, and the other part you put on the other door. So just only 3 plates to have 2 slide doors actually fixed. And well, and I have seen production series and numbers, and from this type only there were 50,000 fabricated, and they were fabricated as prefab packages because they had to be shipped to Europe. And when you put an assembled car in a ship, it takes a lot of space. So that's not smart. So you knock them down actually as in crates, and you ship them to the hub actually. And England was the hub actually for the US Army to get started from to enter Europe, as you all know. So those cars were actually mostly half of it were shipped to England. But next to this, other cars were produced as well. Pullman produced these troop cars, as you may know as well. Some are still left at museums in the US. I think about 10 or 15 still exists. But almost, as you can see, 2,300 were produced in different types. So sleep cars, bunker cars, kitchen car, hospital car. And these were to just transport the volunteers or the enlisted GIs actually to the training camps within the US. And you see the picture right below is being pulled. That's at the Union Pacific Railroad. The first car is a different car. That's an officer car, of course. They won't sit in between the lads in troop cars. And those guys, or part of them, were taken to railroad training camps as there were Fort Eustis, and still is, and Fort Claiborne. They were trained actually how to run a railroad. Actually, those GIs were railroad men. They were only trained in the extra facts of the combat and where to watch from, or how to keep an eye on other military aspects, of course, and to get used to a different way of handling a locomotive. As you can see, the Whitcomb locomotive right down, which is shielded extra for bullets. And in these training camps, those GIs were trained to assemble a boxcar or a tank car or a war flat or whatsoever. All the instructions were written down on all those parts. They were sprayed on it. So you can do a quick job actually, but still you have to train to make it quick actually. But in the end, time is short actually, and Europe is waiting for you. So you have to get trained in this. And when you have built them, then you put them on the rail on the same campsite. You go running around, and then you blow them up. Why about that? It's of course to train to blow up a German train, but you don't have any German trains in America, so you blow up your own trains, your newly built boxcars and gondolas and whatsoever. And this is quite an interesting film, The Mole. It was of course a classified film, strategic film, and after 75 years, it has been released from the US Army archives, and you can find it on YouTube. It's quite interesting. It takes too much time here to display it here now in this presentation, but still, I can, yeah, advise you to do so. And here we see the Pullman company are outside on the premises, and you see those gondolas filled with parts for with parts of the boxcars and other cars, and the crates actually with the chassis in it and other parts actually in those gondolas up to the eastern or western coast actually to be shipped in Liberty ships to England or to the Middle East. They were taken as well to the Middle East or Italy. As were the Whitcomb locomotives as well from Rochelle. they were prepared actually for shipping. They were created, and they were created because there were spies in the US actually, to see what was going on. So I think that's the reason why they were created actually, not yeah. Sorry. But and the picture on the left is actually the quartermaster headquarters in New York. Just before shipping, they were uncrated, loaded onto the deck of a Liberty ship. That's on the right actually, and they were taped actually for because they had to make the transfer at the over the Atlantic Ocean, of course, and that would take about 3 weeks. And all that salted seawater will affect, of course, this engine. And the diesel engines are under the hood, and the wheel sets actually with the electric motors in it were taken off, and they were below decks because they were very delicate and vulnerable, of course. But this tape, it's a really sticky tape. It will stay on, of course. And we, the people who had to pull it off in England, it's a dirty job, I think. But still. And as you can see here, steam locomotives were shipped in the same, actually almost the same way, and the petrol cars on the right as well. 4-axle petrol cars on deck of a Liberty ship. And these pictures shows this same equipment, but in England. They have arrived by Newport Harbor, and they were taken out in England to several places. About 30 miles of track was laid down extra as a storage yard all over England spread, of course, not at one place. When the Luftwaffe would came to one place, it would destroy your whole stock, and that wouldn't be smart. So all over England there were these kind of storage yards actually. As you can see, the S160 on the left and the petrol cars being assembled for smaller parts like air hoses and shutters and whatsoever. They came apart within boxes, and they were put on these cars at these yards actually. And steam locomotives were every 2 weeks, I think so, about taken to depots, the English depots actually, to fire them and see if they work still properly. And then they would run around with 2 or 3 trains during a day, and then where the fire was taken out and back to the storage yard. And here you see a building site, one of the 11 building sites all over England spread, of course, where they assemble those boxcars, one after one, each car 11 steps of 45 minutes, and a transferring time from about 15 minutes in between 2 steps. And as you can see on the lower picture, it's upside down because that's easier to rivet those walls all together, and you make it yourself easy, of course. And what thrills me and I'm excited about is that all these sites weren't in England produced, of course. Every equipment being used at these building sites came from the States, of course. There were complete packages, factories, open air factories actually. It's quite exciting. And this is another picture from England, southern part of Wales, Penrhyn Junction, one of the great junctions in the southern part of Wales. As we see a general Great Western Railway coal train passing by, and of course you see in the middle the Whitcomb locomotives, and they are quite bright in color. Actually, they were a color which looks like sand. It's a pity it is in the color picture as well. Otherwise, you would have seen that this is a sand color. And they were up to the Middle East, because the Americans entered in 42, at the end of 42, already Morocco and Tunisia, to go for Egypt, actually, because the Germans and Italian soldiers from Mussolini were up to the Suez Channel, actually, to take that. And the British asked for help in Egypt by the Allied forces to help them to defeat actually the Germans and the Italians. And that was the big battle at El Alamein, which was won actually by the Allied forces in 43. On the right, there are petrol cars being stored at this yard. And as I told you, that the battle was won in Egypt. The Allied shipped their equipment and went over to Sicily. And from that small isle, they entered the mainland of Italy, southern part in Naples, actually. And the Germans were pulling back, but not without destructing all the infrastructures, actually, especially on the railroads, because they have noticed that the Allied forces were moving around by railway. So the first thing to do was destroy all the railroad infrastructures, water towers, electricity, or whatever was needed to run a train, as you know. And on the left picture, you'll see a typical German invention and bad war invention. Actually, it's called in German Schienenwolf, and it means track destroyer in English. Actually, it was a big hook, a steel hook. You dig it in between a couple of sleepers. You make a big hole. You put it in. You put 3 steam locomotives in front of it, and just get pulling. And you will pull all these sleepers apart, and the rails will bend as spaghetti, actually, Italian spaghetti, and you can't use your track anymore. Or you just, on the right picture, you blow them up with some dynamite or whatever, and then it's useless, of course, those tracks. And those GIs which served the MRS saw a lot in Italy. And some of them wrote their stories down, and another one was making beautiful pictures, actually, and they sent them to trains, to the trains editor. And they published them those days. And that, yeah, was quite exciting, I think. The MRS in Italy, it states. And as the Allied forces went up to the northern part, up to Rome, actually, there was a big battle at Cassino. And Cassino is a mountain ridge and the southern south of Rome, actually. And it took the Allied forces about 4 months to defeat, actually, the Germans and the Italians, actually. But in the end, they won, of course. And then the trains could pull up to Rome, and here we see on the left 2 Whitcombs pulling a train, a supply train to the northern part. And then one of the first actually color pictures I found in archives is the one on the right, actually. A coal train actually pulled by 2 Whitcomb diesel electrics at the 4th of July, which entered the central station of Rome to deliver coal for the electricity factories, actually. So normal life could start up again for the public. And what I think I'm really thrilled about is that you can't buy those flags at that time at a Rome shop. So one of the army commanders or so has already determined, we will win, we will take banners and flags and whatsoever with us to make this victory visible for all the, at this moment, there were 2 or 3 Signal Corps photographers and filmers filming this big moment actually. I found several pictures of this moment at several archives actually. So quite a big thing. Meanwhile, in England, and with the Allied forces staff and commanders, it was determined that there had to be a big landing in France at the beaches actually. But how are you going to do that? And these are pictures of tests at an English lake. We see an austerity steam locomotive being loaded on a small landing ship, actually, just to see if you can have such a loco landed on a beach, actually. And I can tell you, the description on this back of these photos is, we didn't succeed in this test, actually. It was too heavy, actually. The ship was too small, actually, to have such a big loco landed on a beach. But this was done actually just before D-Day. Just give it a try. See what works best actually. Next to this ship has Dessel painting. That's quite an interesting piece of history as well. There are nice books written about this fact actually. It's colorful painting. It's rather again not a color picture, but still, when you paint a ship with these fragments of color, then it will disappear for the U-boats. Actually, from the Germans, actually, you won't see it on sea level. Actually, when you have a look at it, it disappears in the air and all the colors of the sea. Quite thrilling. The English War Department delivered as well locomotives and other equipment for the MRS, as they had ordered earlier before, and that's in 41, at Vulcan Foundry Factory, ordered 20 small shunting locos, and they were actually built for their ammunition depots all over England, spread. And on the right bottom end, you'll see such a drawing of such a depot. All those dark spots are bunkers actually, where ammunition was put in, and all these lines are railway tracks on which those small locos with their small base actually could drove to all those bunkers and distribute all the ammunition on these bunkers. And the photo on the left is as well such a test actually. Just put how are we going to land such a diesel loco on the beach of France? And so they try to put it on a tank transporter with a diamond car in front. But this didn't work out as well. But just keep this in mind, this picture. It's quite interesting. And meanwhile, all the GIs were trained extra in England, all over England. And in the end, just before D-Day, a couple of months before D-Day, they were transported to the southern part of England and packed there in smaller camps, actually. It was quite crowded, as I heard from British people I spoke to in the last couple of years at that time. And so that's why the poster on the left is being published at that time to the public. Is your trip really necessary? Because the trains are really crowded with soldiers, actually, which are moving around for whatever reason as well. And still, there are spies around. So careless talk will cost lives, as the right poster, the poster on the right hand states. And then the 4th of June was actually declared D-Day, decision day, but the weather went bad, and so they waited for better weather, and in the end it became, of course, the 6th of June. But the lads actually were already shipped at the start of the 5th and had to wait a whole day in those landing ships. And I read some stories about these this day, actually, it was horrifying, actually, because they were really packed in these landing ships, of course, not able to move around. They couldn't abandon the ships. It was forbidden to do so. So those lads actually ended up, of course, at the beaches of Normandy, but they had already a really bad day before. So it must be, yeah, hell of a job. 150,000 soldiers entered the Normandy beaches at the 5 or 6 beaches defined, actually, the Sword Beach, the Utah Beach. No, you know them all, of course. This is one of the pictures, of course, the well-known pictures of the landings later on during 6th of June, later on the day, with the blimps in the air, the fake Zeppelins, actually, just to disturb the German Luftwaffe, to prohibit to see them not to destroy the troops which landed, or to assault, I should say. Sorry. At the first 3 months after D-Day, transport was needed, of course. Every day, ammunition, food, medicines, whatever was needed, of course, in daily business and daily life, was transported by the US Army, by the Transportation Corps, and the most well-known is, of course, the Red Ball Express. It lasted only 82 days, actually. Meanwhile, other GIs, actually the Transportation Corps divisions, were rebuilding the railways which were destroyed before by the Germans, actually. And they did a real quick job, because after 3 months, Red Ball Express could come to a standstill, actually. But in those 3 months, they moved 500,000 tons of goods, actually, fuel, whatever was needed as well. The first railway equipment was shipped to the French shores, actually, at the 10th of July, actually. This picture is the one of the first 20 flat cars, actually, being shipped, loaded on tank transporters, being shipped and taken to Utah Beach. And together with 2 small shunting locos, American-built shunting locos. The second batch was launched at the 26th of July, and that was on the right, actually, or actually the picture on upper left. That's Bernières-sur-Mer, or near, actually a place between the places Courcelles-sur-Mer and Bernières-sur-Mer. Here we see the Canadian division, the bicycle regiment, landing on the beach of France. This place is still iconic. The house, the big house you see, is still there, and it's now the Canadian Museum. And there's a monument of the bicycle regiment erected at that place, actually, to memorize this landing. And next to on the right of the big building, you see a smaller building. That's the railway station. And now you understand, maybe, I think, the picture on the right, because that's actually the landing of the 4 War Department locos on that beach. And just behind the photographer is the railway line. So now you understand why those 2 ships land here on this side, actually. It took you only 100 yards maybe to get to the railway, pulled, of course, by 2 Caterpillar tractors, actually. And the loco was mounted on a modified tractor frame, and the engine in picture in front is number 42. And we found out, these pictures are from the Imperial War Museum in London, that the second one still on the boat is 33. And Kristen already mentioned it. our society has number 43. So we were quite thrilled as we found these pictures in the end. And even this whole situation was as well filmed. This unloading at the beach in France was as well filmed by the Sigma Corps, and that film is even more thrilling actually. Those locos were needed actually at the big junction at Cannes. Cannes is a big city, and I just heard about yesterday on the BBC television channel that Cannes was the heaviest bombed city during the liberation operation actually. And 75% of the city was vanished actually after the bombing. So there was a big rebuild necessary as well on the railways, and that's what we see on the left. The engineers has bridging engineers has rebuilt the railway bridge, and those just two arrived locomotives, the 32 and 33, are testing this newly rebuilt railway bridge. Excuse me. Here we see another kind of transport actually, because there were 25,000 freight cars being produced by those building sites actually, and they had to be shipped to France, not one at a time, but as many as you could carry on a ship. So the Allied forces confiscated actually the former sea train ferry boats, which ran normally in between England and Ireland. And those were big ships, as you can see, and they could contain about 100 box cars or flat cars. But because it's wartime, you don't have time to wait for the tide. Actually, its sea tide is going up and down a couple of 30 yards or maybe even 50 yards each half day. And you can't wait for the right tide. So what did they do? They welded a big crane, as you can see on the back end of the ship, just to load and unload at any time railway equipment. If the tide was right, then you could put a bridge in between the quay and the wall actually, and of the quay and the ship. And here we see at Southampton a Whitcomb diesel electric locomotive being loaded onto a sea train ship actually. And fact is that we have a Dutch proverb which says, which states actually, tussen wal en schip. It states in between quay and ship, and it means then you're in trouble. And we hope for, of course, this Whitcomb isn't in trouble. I don't think so. It's well taken on the ship by those GIs actually, of course. And you see in the left picture the boxcar as well waiting for to being shipped. And here we see a Southern converted car, which is a mobile workshop. It's one of the 5 cars needed to form a mobile workshop for the shop battalions actually. This was a car which could carry steel or wood or materials needed for repairs actually, or maybe even other equipment actually needed for repairing locomotives and cars. On the right hand, you will see the shipping into landing ships of extra war flat cars, coal cars, and whatever. And you see still some blimps lying around, not used so far. These pictures are taken in France at Cherbourg. Cherbourg is one of the big harbor places in Normandy. And that harbor wasn't available because the Germans sank a lot of big ships in the harbor just to block the harbor actually for the Allied forces before being pulled out. So we have Houston, we have a problem, I should say, actually. I think this is as well quite something, quite a challenge. Think sitting in the US as an army commander, you're thinking about, well, what if we couldn't use a harbor? What do we need to enter France? And then you think of a portable bridge. You see that every equipment needed to build a railway on the beach is available, like those caterpillars, railway tracks, sleepers, mounting equipment, whatever is needed to build a railway. And they did within a couple of days. They built 2 big, long railways to the city center or station, actually, from Cherbourg, as you can see on the right upper side. I think these achievements are really thrilling. I can't imagine to think about this sitting on a desk in the States, actually, and make this plan and make it work and make all these logistics work, actually, in the end. It's really a big challenge. And here we see it really in action. One of the LSTs, LCTs, unloading coal cars, actually. These were as well knocked down assembly packages and assembled in England, as I told you about. And here we see some GIs just waiting for the cars to be unloaded. There was even, of course, speaker equipment with it to shout some commands what to do. And it's quite relaxing. It's August 1944, nice weather. And here we see Sherman, the Cherbourg Maritime Station. Left upper side is the building just being just after the opening in 1937. And the picture in the middle is a few years later in wartime, completely destroyed. And left under, you'll see the whole harbor port of Cherbourg with the station on the isle in the middle. That's quite a mess, as you can see. After the sunken ships were cleared by the Allied forces, the harbor was available again, but the harbor installations like the big cranes weren't available. They were destroyed, of course. So from England came some floating cranes, actually, just to unload these Liberty ships with the railway equipment and whatever was needed, of course, to get their MRS running. Here you see still, I've changed this picture with the other one, sorry about that. But the left upper right, the left upper photo is inside such a landing ship, actually. 3 tracks actually filled with boxcars, ready to be unloaded on the French beach or the Cherbourg harbor, actually. Just fits in, as you can see. And as I stated already, it's quite relaxing in August 1944, nice weather, while other soldiers giving their lives, actually, for the liberation of Europe. Those guys are quite, like almost, I can't say it or pronounce it or put it that way, but it looks like vacation, actually. Holidays. Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. But still, railways are being rebuilt by the GIs, the operating battalions. And as you see this here happen, just make the best out of the parts you will find, all by hand. Most of the times, I have several pictures of rebuilding those railways, actually. If one track is already done, then it's okay. You don't need 2 of them. There were no signal system. It was just see as far as you can go, and it went wrong many times. They collided the trains because there was no signaling method, actually, to run these trains. But next to this, on weekly basis or even sometimes on, I think, daily basis, there were leaflets and small magazines being printed just to publish the achievements by the MRS battalions, as you can see on the left. And these locomotives were serviced in depots, the French depots, as you can see here, so S160 in such a depot, typical French depot. And here we see some GIs on the left, railwaymen, with their French colleagues actually wearing those typical butterfly glasses actually to they always wear in France actually. So this is an S160, of course. All these guys as well wrote down their stories and their experiences in small booklets like this saga one of the Railway Operating Battalion. And Nancy, as I stated, Nancy Cunningham gathers all these booklets. Very nice. Here we see some coal being moved around to supply the troops actually. And as I wrote some documents, half of this fuel, coal, and whatever petrol was used by the transportation corps itself, just to get the stuff around in France or Belgium later on. Here we see some petrol cars on the left. Each car contains 10,000 gallons of petrol. The army was running on petrol, not on diesel. Diesel was a new kind of stuff, and yeah, it was not common yet. So everything was almost on petrol, on gasoline, and it was being transferred into the jerry cans actually. And the jerry cans were loaded into the GMCs, and GMCs ran to the boys and at the front lines actually, and they loaded up the Sherman tanks, the fuel tanks of the Shermans actually, with these jerry cans. And I know a lot of guys at those times smoked. I don't hope someone smoked on this side here on the right side, because I think they spilled a lot of petrol as well, but must be, I've been gone wrong once. I don't know. This is not a picture made in France, near the front actually, front lines, the battle lines actually, as we see boxes being transferred from the trains, which came from the Normandy harbors, loaded into the trucks, Chevrolet, Fords, and GMCs, and taken to the men fighting for the liberty of Europe. And this is actually a map of southern part of England. You see a small piece on the upper left, and then France down left, and Belgium, and to the right upper part where Berlin is the main goal. All these thick lines are restored railway lines. The Emirates rebuilt, and you can see the lines go up to the shores where the big harbors are actually. And en route, those trains ran, and en route the infrastructure was destroyed. So you had to take the opportunity to get some water for your steam locomotive along the way. Stop at a bridge, and there was a pump, and it pumps water, fresh water, into your tender actually. And here we see the U.S. Army Transportation Corps trains running through Germany. That's a German caboose actually in the upper left picture, which is being occupied, of course, by Transportation Corps, being used as a guide caboose. And that train stops because a train with wounded soldiers is going back to England, to take these guys to England to be taken care of. But even soldiers were moved by these their own boxcar trains actually, as you see on the other picture. And the Whitcomb diesel was first to come across the Rhine, actually at Wesel, in the start of 1945, March 1945. That bridge was built within 10 days, and it's about half a mile long. That achievement was, as you can see at the paper, at the Rochelle Leader, the local paper where the factory was from Whitcomb. Big news. And then at the 8th of May 1945, in the end, Germany surrendered. And yeah, Europe was free again, as you can see at these beautiful colored pictures, slides. Then we found in Holland, and this is a place called Nijmegen, this is at the eastern part of Holland, we found some former US transportation equipment at the depot. The Whitcomb, some of them are found there, and we found 5 of the War Department shunting locomotives. And how do we know exactly these facts and places? In the Imperial War Museum, there are war diaries archived, and you can just read them and see. And every day there were records being written down on the movements of locomotives and other railway equipment, where they have been gone to, what happened with that equipment, or where they broken down or repaired whatsoever. Everything is written down. Everything is documented. And that's quite interesting. Every railway in Europe actually suffered great losses in people, but great losses as well in equipment. And the Dutch railways had lost about 75% of their railway equipment. So they needed desperate some other equipment. And so they bought from the Transportation Corps 20 diesel locomotives, those Whitcombs. And here we see the second train on one of the main bridges in Holland just being restored. And the second train was this batch of Whitcomb locomotives from France, just arrived from France, where the big dumps, army dumps were, and taken to one of the shops in Holland of the railways. And the railways, Dutch railways, bought as well 2,000 former transportation cars, actually. And you see some types here: flat car, box car, sand car, and a petrol car. But those Whitcombs weren't that good as the Dutch railways thought they were. They suffered all kind of mechanical problems, and in the end, they replaced the Buddha diesel engines by Dutch built ones. But they didn't last long. In 1960, all were scrapped actually. So after 15 years, actually, after acquisition. And they were replaced actually by French-built locomotives you see on the right and left side of this Whitcomb. The Whitcomb has been transferred somewhat by Dutch railways, new lamps in it, and other painting scheme. And the good fans weren't even better. It was, of course, a cheap production, and the US Army decided it should only last for about 1 year, maximum 3 years. So it hasn't to be any of any quality. And that's what the Dutch railways find out in the start of the 50s, actually. Just the cars really fell apart on the railways. The wheels broke down, and they really broke down and fell apart. And so in the end, they ended up as stationary cars, or even as homes. And on the left picture, someone has got such a boxcar from the Dutch railways and converted it into a home. It must be really, really chilly in the wintertime at that time, because it's only a ½ inch thick, those walls. And some were, most of them were sold to scrapyards, and those were smart guys. they took off all the metals and resold actually the boxes itself as farmer sheds to farmers. And here we see two former boxcars being transported by a truck transporting company, which took them to some farmers. Well, many years after that, like Kristen told, I was one of the members of the Stevens Society, and we found just at once when we traveled by former War Department loco in Antwerp at Aartselaar. It's a small place in the near of Antwerp, and yeah, it seems to be a former War Department logo. So we took the chance to buy it actually, and it had been converted by the Dutch state mines because it served there after the war, and we bought it, and this is our society, and we did a completely rebuild because we noticed it was worn, totally worn. Actually, it was ready to be scrapped after all those years, and we did a totally rebuild. It took us about 15 years to rebuild it, and not continuously, but in parts actually over all that period. Those were the lads, actually, our members, volunteers who did the job. And we even hired the Dutch army to transport our loco from one location to another location, as we had to at one time. And so we could get along rebuilding it. And in the end, in 2012, it was finished. And I made just one mistake. I ordered black paint as War Department's logo and the US Army Transportation Corps logo were painted with. But I didn't mention it had to be a matte, dull color, actually. It doesn't have to shine. I got the wrong paint, so our logo shined. But in the end, commemorations of the Operation Market Garden operation was there in 2014, and we took the logo over there. And as you have noticed before, the old picture in 1944 in England, the test with the logo was still in our mind, and we had someone which had such a set, some diamond tractor and army, Sherman army transporter, and we just tried to put our logo on it, and it worked. It worked fine, actually, but we didn't have to land on the beach, of course. And it was actually great fun, actually, to be the middle of this commemoration, because everyone was thrilled by seeing a logo, and they didn't know the story about the MRS. So it took us a whole week, actually, the event, and it took us a whole week to explain why a logo is on this military event. Actually, people were thrilled. And even more along the route, Hell's Highway, it is called, the former Operation Market Garden route from southern part to the middle of Holland. And about 250,000 people were along the route, and they were really, really thrilled by seeing this, unexpected. We didn't announce it that we would attend this event, and they just couldn't get it. And then we had still another wish to have such a former war veteran, railway war veteran, back to Holland again, such a Whitcomb loco. And someone deceased, and his family said, well, we would like to have him honored because he was into the World War II Army history. We would love to, if you try to get a former Whitcomb loco out of the US and take it back to Holland again. So I accepted the challenge, and I started to make this happen actually, with the help of another museum line here in Holland. And we did some crowdfunding, and it worked in the end. And we found 10 locos still available in the States. Actually, 4 were plinthted and 6 were still at factories. One of them was Lehigh Heidelberg Cement Group at Mason City, Iowa. And we wrote to the management over there and told that we would like to have such a loco just to honor the Transportation Corps, because of in 2020, it was 75 years ago, the liberation of Europe was a fact. And we would attend or we would arrange a big event, a railway event, on which we would unveil actually this loco and unveil a memorial and a monument to dedicate and to honor the soldiers of the Transportation Corps. And the Lehigh Cement Group management agreed, of course, in doing so. And they said, well, you can have this loco and see, you get it transported to Europe. So we did. In the end, we succeeded in getting the money, getting the logistics done. And in the end, it was transported from Iowa to Milwaukee. And we had a sea company from Rotterdam, Holland, which had boats which went to the Great Lakes, actually, to Chicago and Milwaukee. So we were quite lucky, and they were thrilled to take the loco back home again to Holland. Even the U.S. Embassy and the Dutch Embassy helped us to doing so. Actually, was great. It was a great moment. And here you see the landing in 2017 in Antwerp Harbor, where the loco is unloaded actually. And afterwards we repainted the loco. I ordered again the wrong paint, sorry about that. It should be anthracite, almost black, and it worked out as being light gray actually, but still. The loco was repainted as Transportation Corps Whitcomb. And at one of the railways, there's a Davenport shunting steam locomotive, as you can see. And our war department from our society was present as well, being repainted as Dutch Railway 162 loco. Afterwards, in 2018, another Whitcomb was acquired by another railway in Holland, and I was called, Hans, can you help us on transporting this loco from the States to Holland? And yes, of course, I was willing to do so. So we now have nowadays 2 of these locos. They are not running yet. This one is almost running, but well, it's quite an achievement to get them fixed again. And we were pointed that there were still some remains left of these former boxcars, US boxcars. As you can see, they were still in use as farmer sheds, but well, deteriorated, of course, during all those decades. But still, we managed to save 2 of them. And as we did, but it was big news. TV channel came to have this story recorded actually, and they interviewed the farmer. How it's about to have a former wartime boxcar on your premises. And we found another one in Germany, and I just told Kristen just before we started this presentation that I have gotten this boxcar from the scrapyard by just give this yard owner for an Edammer cheese. So there's such a typical Dutch cheese. And I traded it in for this boxcar. I gave him this cheese. He said, well, I'm really excited and surprised by this Dutch cheese. You may have your boxcar. come next week and collect your car. So sometimes you're just lucky. And we had this former boxcar as well. And then we took it all apart, all those items we picked up from those farmer yards and scrap yards, and we did a complete rebuild. Actually, it took us 3 years to rebuild this boxcar, and parts were new being made. Of course, because some were disappeared or just rotten away, and this was something extraordinary. The planks we used for the floor and for the walls actually needed were just from a wood in Germany, which has been planted by U.S. Army just after war to rebuild some of the woods in Germany. I didn't know that story about that the U.S. Army did even a kind of, I don't know if you call it a rebuild. They planted trees, and after 70 years they were grown and they were taken down and made planks out of it. So these typical, and those were American origins, as we were told actually. And so we have American planks, American pine actually as in this restored American boxcar. It's quite extraordinary. And this is how it looks nowadays. And as far as we know, this is the only one restored to factory drawings, actually, back to as it was, as it left Pullman. And we are quite proud of it because it tells again the story about the military railway services throughout Europe during the liberation operation. And there are still some remains left in Europe. Like in Poland, the brown boxcar, it's a little converted one. The petrol car is still in Holland. The war flat with the signal on it on the right downside is in Belgium. And in Greece, there you find some remains of what could have been a coal car, actually. But those are US Army cars, still around after 80 years. And these are the locomotives still around. So the S160, 8 of them are still left in the US, or in the UK, sorry. And the Devonport we've already seen, that's in Holland. And an austerity from the former War Department is still in England. It's actually a former Dutch railway engine. It was being moved to England in the 60s, I think. And the War Departments are still available as well. In 10 of them, of the 20 built, 10 of them are still there. And we got 4 of them here in Holland and 6 are in England. And we have tried to make a big railway event in 2020 because at the 75th commemoration of the liberation. And we thought, well, let's try to make a big statement of the importance of the logistics done by the military railway services. And we made preparations during a year. And at the start of 2020, you all know what happened worldwide. The pandemic was there. So no event. All preparations were gone. And we already had this train ready for the public, and everything went down the drain, as you call it. I think it's a pity, and I don't think it will happen again because it's quite a challenge to make such an event happen. And meanwhile, our loco, War Department 33, still there. It's up and running actually, or not at this moment. It's static, being displayed at the museum I have been working for, together with the boxcar, as you can see. The museum is now closed because they have to leave the building actually, but that's a pity. So we are looking for another space to make them in public actually, and even get them running again. And our latest project is having bought another boxcar in France, which was up to being scrapped. And we like to transfer it in the car, which is being seen on the photo on the right. And after the liberation of Belgium, another year was taken to build more than 10,000 boxcars at the Labergoise factories, the railway factories in Brugge, a place in Belgium. I didn't know about that story as well. So I got a tip from someone. He said, you have to look at this film. It's a weekly journal. And I see some train cars running by. I think that they look, yeah, like those Americans. And they were actually, as you can see. So that's another, yeah, a big surprise actually. And we like to make a replica of this car actually and show and tell the story that after the liberation, even those box cars and other cars were built just to get things going and get all those foods and everything what was needed to get normal life back again on track, to supply to get these things transported by these box cars. And if you're interested in after this presentation, there are many books around all over the world in all kind of languages, in German, in French, in English, of course, American English produced books, quite interesting stories. And well, I would like to thank you all for attending this meeting and open for maybe some next time in future.
Great. Thank you so much, Hans. That was something that I knew very little about. So I learned a lot during this presentation. And we are definitely going to get to our question and answer session in just a moment here. So gather up those questions. I am going to share really quick before we all scatter what's coming up at the museum. So our next Trolleyology will be in just a couple weeks. I believe will be the Newark City subway in New Jersey. And then in July, we'll have one about Cleveland's attempts to build a subway from author Craig Semsel. And then in August, I am pleased to announce we will have a New Orleans streetcars presentation from another author who lives in New Orleans and has written a couple books about those. So make sure you tune in for those. And thank you again for joining us today. And if you'd like to support the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum, you can go to patrolley.org/support, become a member or a volunteer. Hans, you know how much these organizations need volunteers, right? So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you, yeah. And let's see, what else was I going to say? Oh, and this program will be shared on our YouTube. I'm a little bit behind on sharing our YouTube presentations. I apologize for that, but I will get those up after this crazy weekend that we have. Okay, so a couple questions that came up during the presentation that I noticed. We're getting lots of wonderful comments, by the way. Fascinating. Thank you for all the work you have done putting this together. And
My
yes,
pleasure.
Yeah, and then let's see, great timing. Yes, that's we did this on purpose. So it's actually already the anniversary of D-Day, in case you missed it, where Hans is presenting from in the Netherlands. So it is, let's see, what, 2:30 a.m. there. So
Yeah,
we are very appreciative that Hans was able to stay up late tonight to show this program. I had a question kind of like about the differences between railway preservation in Europe and the US. I mean, right from the end of your presentation, I can see a lot of similarities in that a lot of things were saved because they became a farmer's shed or a chicken coop, or, you know, these things that are scattered around the country that were saved and discovered decades later. But what do you think some of the major challenges are in railway preservation in Europe?
Well, a lot of railway equipment was scrapped because spaces are tight here in Europe, and lots of things are going on, and a lot of people like to get rid of old stuff. So you have to be aware at time and to point the things you like to save. Actually, you just have to call railway companies and make a statement. So if you would, if you have plans to scrap or put railway equipment aside, just think of us. We like to have this one and this one. You have to be in time to get your collection expanded actually with significant railway equipment. If you don't do, things will vanish, and those things happened in the last decades actually, and everyone is complaining about, oh, this should have been saved, and that should have been saved, but no one takes action actually. So you have to take action in time to save significant pieces of railway equipment.
Yep.
That's our challenge here in Europe.
Let's see. Lots of nice comments still coming
Thank
in.
you. Thank
And
you all.
one of our volunteers says, good luck, best of luck in finding a new location for the equipment.
Yes, that's quite a challenge as well.
Yeah, that's another issue we have here in the US, right?
Do you?
Yeah, I mean, occasionally a museum will have to close or move and send its equipment somewhere else. Yeah, it happens here too.
That's a pity.
Yeah. So everyone should be able to unmute themselves now if you have a question or a comment for Hans.
Yeah,
Anybody?
if any, I'm willing, of course, to answer these.
Oh, and before that, Tim Spazzato from the Age of Steam Roundhouse Museum commented that they're having a World War II event at Age of Steam in Sugar Creek, Ohio, June 14th and 15th, commemorating D-Day using vintage US Army rail equipment and an S-160. So
Great.
if you want to experience more World War II railway history, head out to Sugar Creek, which is not too far from Pittsburgh.
Love to go there, but well, it's quite a distance.
Yeah, might be too late.
Next time.
Next time. Okay, any questions or comments for Hans? Uh-oh. Randy, we're not getting your audio. It came out like a chipmunk sound. So maybe if you come back, leave and come back. Okay, great. In the meantime, let's see, anybody else? We got to kill some time until Randy comes back. So someone must have a question. I think
I'll ask a question.
Go ahead.
If that's okay. Yeah, at the end, you showed the boxcars being built in Belgium. Is that the same factory that built PCC cars later? BN.
Yeah, correct. You're correct, Paul.
Okay.
That's it's now called BN, but it's La Brugoise factory actually. They did build Pullman cars as well in license, and trams like the PCCs actually for The Hague and other cities actually in Europe. That is a factory which produced a lot of railway and tram equipment. Yeah.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
You're still
can you
there.
hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Perfect.
Okay. Hans, quick question for you. Just a few slides back before the end of your presentation, I think it had a picture of the museum you were talking about. And in there appeared to be a car, looked like an Isetta, but off to the right of that picture was some huge black vehicle of some sort.
Yeah.
Side.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Well, it is an electric bus actually, made by one of our Dutch astronauts. It was his idea to transform public transportation in a quite comfortable way of transporting people, about up to 30 people at a time, at a high speed. So about I think 100 miles an hour, 120 miles, 130 miles an hour, at special arranged lanes actually, and all electric. And this prototype actually is built by the University of Delft, one of the engineering universities in Holland. It's built about 20-25 years ago, and it was one of the first prototypes of electric transportation, but they didn't succeed. It was now obvious not a flexible car or whatsoever. So it was just, it cost a lot of millions. I think about $8 million about the whole project, and it didn't work out. But you have to go for it first to have some tests and some prototypes, of course, before you went into good production actually.
It would look very interesting. I mean, the whole program
It
is
is.
interesting into and of itself, but as soon as I saw
It's
something
like a
like
rocket
that,
a little bit, and it has all kind of these wing doors. Actually, they go up, open to the up. Open up actually like wings.
thank you for a great eye-opening program here. It really was excellent.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, done with pleasure.
Do we have any other questions or comments?
I will definitely say I learned something completely new, and I've looked at a lot of the railroads in Europe and all that stuff.
Oh, good to hear.
Yep.
Welcome.
And it was a big part of World War II.
It really was. I can even state that after each fighting soldier, 7 logistic soldiers were on actually to get him moving and get him supplied with food and medicines and his letters from home, and sent his letters back to home to the US. And that was all done by the Transportation Corps, actually.
Wow.
So they were quite important.
Yeah, I remember visiting the Normandy beaches, I don't know, 12 or 15 years ago. And in certain spots, you can still see remnants of rail ties and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah, there still are remains actually of the whole operation actually. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else or Catherine?
Yeah, having been involved in a couple of loadings and unloadings and building ramps, the idea of running rail down to the beach and building the ramp out into the water to get a ship to come up to it just blows my mind. It just,
yeah, it does mine as well. So like I said, I was really amazed and thrilled by the thought of building a railway on a beach at one day, and see that it worked as well, and they did a great job.
Sink into everything.
They took everything with them. So it was mind-boggling actually, I think. Yeah, I agree.
So thanks so much for this enlightening program.
Oh, thank you. I've done with pleasure. Yeah, my pleasure.
But could one more question?
Go ahead.
Sure.
If you can answer it, Hans. I noticed we built coal cars. Where, to the best of your knowledge, I'm sure we didn't ship coal over there. Maybe we did. But to the best of your knowledge, where might that coal have come from in Europe to power those engines?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure if it was produced in England. I assume, because at that time England had a lot of coal mines at the Sheffield area and Birmingham area, and they produced a lot of coal. So I assume again that it was English coal and not from any other country, although Poland produces a lot of coal as well, even at that time already and during wartime, but they couldn't reach for it. So, and I don't think they would ship coal out of the US all the way to Europe. It's not obvious to me actually. So I think, yeah, like I said, I think it's English produced.
Yeah, one of the commenters, Andrew says, and South Wales.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Subutai has his hand up. Go ahead.
Everybody, thank you very much, Hans. That was an excellent and informative presentation. I know your focus tonight was on, cargo and freight, but would you mind, if you can, the Germans and other European nations used a lot of railway guns in both of the world wars. Did the United States or the Allied powers take over any railway guns to Europe for use in any of the battles or any of the campaigns?
Not as far as I know, but they did actually after the war. They occupied some of these objects actually and took them to the States actually, and one of them is still at Fort Eustis as far as I know. One of these Krupp guns, railway guns, and there's one left in France. I have seen that last year actually when I went there. But for action, as far as I know, they didn't use it. The Allied forces didn't use the German ones. There were some built in England and for World War One, and they used them in World War II, but they didn't reach out so far to be effective actually. So in the end, I think they didn't use them. But I'm not specialized in these aspects of warfare and railway business. Sorry.
One of the
That's
guns
okay.
was
Thank you.
one of the guns was at the Aberdeen Proving Ground, Anzio Annie.
Oh yeah, that's correct.
That was moved down to Virginia. It took my dad to see it because he was hitting Anzio by that gun.
Ah, yeah, but you're right. Yeah, that's the correct place. Yeah.
I never told him. We went into Aberdeen and he saw it sticking up out of the air. He says, "Is that what I think it is?" I said, "Well, you'll see in a minute."
Oh, right. Great. Yeah.
Wow. All righty. Any other questions before we let Hans go to sleep?
I'm still awake.
Well, this was wonderful. Thank you again so much. I'm really excited that we got to host this presentation for the first time in English. And then from what I understand, Hans is doing this program again tomorrow. So, but in Dutch this time. So thank you so much again. And thank you to everyone who came, and especially thank you to those of you who donated for tonight. And if you have an idea for a future Trolleyology program, please reach out. Hans, if you make any other Trolleyology programs that you can share with us, you're welcome to come back. So,
oh, thank you, Kristen. Maybe, you never know.
Yeah, sure thing. So again, we'll see some of you for the West Penn Trolley Meet in the next few days. And if I don't see you, we'll see you again for the next one in a couple weeks. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night.
See you in a few days.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.